It is my privilege to introduce to you tonight my guest, Lorelai Dumitrescu. She's a college teacher. What college are you teaching at?
I'm teaching French at Malcolm X College.
The Malcolm X College. May I ask you a question?
Yes.
It is politically incorrect. Is this a sort of a black power college or something?
There's a long history behind it, but it's one of the original city colleges of Chicago, and it was set up to assist like minorities and help promote college education to minorities. So I don't think it's type of black power, but
right now most of your students are black or white or?
Yeah, 99% African American.
African Americans, yeah. And what is your feeling as a white teacher in an African American environment?
Well, I'm new at Malcolm X College. I taught at UIC before, and my experience, I mean, for me, there really isn't much of a difference.
There isn't much of a difference.
When you teach in the city, you kind of have a lot of diversity. So I've been exposed to people of different races that have different socioeconomic backgrounds.
Race is in the eye of the beholder, they say.
Yeah.
Do you agree with this statement?
I mean, I think people need to have a good historical context to be able to form ideas, and to be a racist is kind of, in the United States, to ignore a huge history. And so, yeah.
I think we'll touch on the issue of racism in this conversation, so you'll have the opportunity to tell us more about your experience working with African American students, which I think is great. Razvan is the other guest. Razvan is a graduate of the Hyperion University in Bucharest, which most of you know, it's an acting school. So Razvan is an actor. And from what I know, Razvan, am I wrong, or you have been one of the favorites of Maya Morgenstein?
I hope so.
Which is one of my favorite actresses. Okay, and so you acted together with Maya Morgenstein.
No, she was our teacher. I never.
You never been on stage with her?
No.
No, just as a teacher.
Yes.
It's teacher-student relationship. What kind of roles did you act in Romania?
Well, in college, I did. I don't know. I even studied. Of course, we started off with Shakespeare and Hamlet. I don't know the names of it in English. It's Chekhov. Azilul de Noapte.
Yeah.
It's,
the Night Asylum.
No, I think it's called the. I don't remember.
I watched the movie
really different
in English, in Romania, back in Romania.
It's not called the
yeah, but the headline was in Romania.
Something Pits. I was Vasca Pepel. A lot of different roles, but mostly I focused on the theater of the absurd.
Theater of the absurd. And this is a very good thing, because I am going to ask you a few questions about your experience as acting in the theater of the absurd, because they are related to our topic tonight, because our topic tonight is a question. Is there a new Enlightenment coming? Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens made the prediction that a new Enlightenment is in the making in our world. And this new Enlightenment is going to be like a new reaction against theocratic tendencies in the United States and religious tribalism around the world. And my first question to you is, do you believe that a new Enlightenment is coming in the world, and what do you think will be the reaction of people in the church, of churchified people, if I may use this word? Is this correct English? Teacher?
I think you can use that word.
So churchified, when I say churchified, I kind of imagine petrified, stratified into churches. What is the reaction of churchified people going to be against or for this new wave of enlightenment? So this is my first question. Do you believe that a new enlightenment is dawning in this world?
Okay, to try to answer that question, I think from a certain perspective you can say that science is slowly taking, not slowly, but at a quite rapid pace, taking the place of religion.
Yeah.
We've seen, like over hundreds of years, we've seen this shift happening. And I think with this generation especially, and with the new atheist philosophers, writers, whatever, scientists that came out, you see that a lot of young people especially are leaning towards just a purely scientific explanation that does not include God. And if that's what you mean by enlightenment, we're definitely headed in that path. As opposed to or how church people would react to this, I think, unfortunately, instead of trying to understand this phenomenon and respond to this phenomenon and join in, keeping our perspective, a lot of church-going people are rejecting the changes that are happening in society, and they're not really creating a dialogue. And so, yeah, they're definitely rejecting it.
Razvan, what do you think
I
about?
believe it's dangerous to disagree with people like Dawkins, but still, I'm aware I don't know half the things they do, but I don't see it possible. I don't see the church people going with a new enlightenment. And although I don't understand this, okay, science kind of overcame a religion, and now it's taking the lead. Out of all the people that I get to meet every single day, all of them are pro-science, but I don't know how much science they really do know.
This is a
Because
fact.
everybody likes to take sides with science because it sounds intelligent. But I don't know how many people do study and understand science. I don't say that I do, but I'm pretty convinced 98% of the people that say they do, they don't.
And there's a lot of pseudoscience around, like water is influenced by your talk or stuff like that, you know.
And we have science, we have religion, but we have, I don't know, before you take sides, you got to know your history, you got to know your geography, you got to know religions of the world. You got to know religion before you take sides, because most people say I'm pro science, but they know absolutely nothing about the history of religion. Absolutely nothing.
I'm going to ask you a question about the history of religion. The history of religion as reflected in your personal experience, because from what I know about you, you used to be an atheist back in Romania.
Yes.
Now you are a Seventh-day Adventist, and you used to play, to act.
Yeah.
And you studied Shakespeare and acting, which is really, I mean, it's really real education. Okay, excuse my pleonasm. Now, the question to is, how do you relate your experience in the theater of absurd with religion?
I really enjoy.
Is there a common denominator?
Yes, there is. Well, the theater of the absurd actually came into being because of this. Because of these brilliant people like Samuel Beckett and Eugen Ionescu,
Urmuz.
French now.
Urmuz.
Yes, because they
even Caragiale somehow.
Not that much,
No,
but no.
He had some like.
Well, Samuel. Let's focus on Samuel Beckett right now, because I played a lot. I played Waiting for Godot.
Oh,
and
great.
This is how theater of the absurd came into being. People departing from focusing on religion, not understanding anything about life, and when they started asking questions, they started dreaming up answers, which came into an absurd existence. And I was really passionate about it, being an atheist. I loved I don't know, studying this domain, because it kind of reflected my way of living.
Okay, but let me say something, because we are talking about enlightenment here, and may I make right one of my omissions in this table talk. I just forgot to tell you that Lorelei had her master thesis on the topic on the French Enlightenment.
The representations of religion in Enlightenment literature. So
the representation of religion in Enlightenment literature.
Right.
Like Diderot.
Yes, just focusing on 4 novels and just kind of trying to see what the authors are trying to say through this medium of literature. So not necessarily studying the philosophy
Yeah.
by itself, but more kind of like one of the mediums.
But I mean, it's very interesting from our perspective because you're as one. You talk from your experience in the theater of the absurd, and it's an atheist theater. But basically, in my own understanding, it's not atheist maybe, it's
I wouldn't call
agnostic.
it atheist.
It's agnostic.
Yes, I wouldn't call it atheist.
But the message, the way I perceive it, and excuse me if I am short-sighted in this respect, the message is that the world is irrational, has no center to hold. Okay.
The world?
The world.
Yeah.
Yeah. The reality.
Yeah.
Reality
Yes.
is subjective, is even solipsist, is irrational.
Yes.
And since this is the message, how I perceive it. On the other hand, the theater of the Enlightenment and Enlightenment literature was like the world is very rational, is Newtonian, the world, and religion is absurd. So I think they perceive religion as a kind of theater of the absurd, if I may use this metaphor, you know. On the other hand, the theater of the absurd is a sort of perceiving the world outside as being absurd, you know.
Yes.
Kind of has a vacuum that sort of cries for religion. So okay, I'm going to ask you just to develop this idea.
Well, you're talking about Enlightenment literature,
Yeah.
In a way showing the absurdity
Of religion.
in religion. Oh, and I wanted to add to that is what's really interesting, especially, I don't know if you've ever read Muhammad or Fanaticism. It's the same title.
By Voltaire?
Yes. And pretty much the whole purpose of that piece is just to illustrate how the institution of religion creates absurd human beings and creates irrational, we would say maybe fundamentalist type individuals who are practically brainwashed. So yes, I would definitely agree with your statement that, you know, it is showing the absurdity in religion.
On the other hand, Voltaire wrote that piece that it's more alive in my mind than Muhammad is the Candide. And I think that Voltaire is taking on a philosophical idealism. A word is the best word among all the possible words. This was Leibniz.
Right. I think he was rejecting Leibniz's idea that our world is the best possible world.
Yeah, yeah. So he was an Enlightenment person, but was also very realistic, and he didn't buy into all this kind of doctrines that Friedrich Nietzsche said that Leibniz and Kant, in fact, are a sort of cover-up for religion beliefs in providence and in God. And I think Voltaire is very close to Nietzsche in this respect. In fact, was one of his mentors. And so, may I repeat my question? Okay. How did they perceive the world? The Enlightenment people, they believed in science, and they believed that religion was absurd. Did they give any chance to any kind of more rational religion?
I think to make a sweeping statement like
Yeah.
that doesn't capture the breadth of the Enlightenment, which is pretty much a movement that took place, starting in the mid-1600s, that spanned across Europe with different individuals that had different interests, some of which were responding to tyrannical religion that was justified through the dogmatism of the church. So that's one aspect of it. And then, I'm sorry, the second part of your question.
So my question, let me rephrase my question. Was the Enlightenment philosopher an atheist or promoter of atheism, or they rather wanted to have a more kind of rational religion?
Okay, so again, you can't say that all of them were or all of them were not. I mean, you have different groups of Enlightenment philosophers. You have like the Montesquieu's and the Diderots that were pure materialist, one substance believers. But again, you have Voltaire, you have Rousseau, who didn't completely reject the idea of God, and almost God had a necessary place in society when it came to divine retribution, keeping some kind of stability in order, because Voltaire wasn't totally for total equality. He was very much an elitist himself and believed that the monarchy could somehow maintain some type of order. So, right, so my point with that. I'm sorry, the second part of that.
Yeah, the question was that if some of them were like, willing to have a dialogue with enlightened pastors or priests, clergy, about society and religion. So they believe that the church could play a role in making society more enlightened, rational?
I think the focus was on the individual and the individual being able to be rational and to understand the laws of nature. And that does not in any way exclude the existence of God.
Yeah.
But what the point of a lot of Enlightenment writers who focused on the idea of religion was to kind of take out the idea that divine revelation is like the be-all, end-all of real truth. And that was kind of what was done up until that point. And so they wanted to put the power in the individual's hands to be able to use the tools around them, take advantage of the scientific revolution that was going on, and be able to come to certain conclusions about the world around them that were not necessarily linked to divine revelation. So it wasn't necessarily in all of its aspects a fight against religion or the idea of God. It was just kind of a rejection of what had been happening up until that point and what was being promoted by the institution of the church, which was kind of like, let us take care of the answers. So that's kind of what their purpose was.
This will take us to our next questions. But before that, I'd like to ask Rozvan, your experience as going from the theater of the absurd to religion. Okay, I think in a certain way it's typical, and I'll tell you why. Because the theater of the absurd, Waiting for Godot, for example, or Ionesco, is the opposite of Enlightenment. The Enlightenment writers believe that the world is rational. Maybe Rousseau is a little bit of an exception here. He's a more like
there's an emotional component.
Yeah.
Too.
He's almost a romantic.
Right.
Yeah, but the common denominator basically is that the world is rational and people should be led by reason.
Well,
now, the absurd theater is rejected this concept of a rational world. So they believe that this trend, not only in theater, but in literature and philosophy, what we call basically postmodernism, is in one way or another a good ally of religious fundamentalism, so that the church might become another stage for the theater of the absurd?
I don't know what to say about that. I'm not a big fan of postmodernism.
Yeah.
I honestly am not really enthusiastic about it.
Neither do I.
Oh, really? I don't know what to say. I just think that people are not concentrating on real art anymore and on real writers.
Yeah.
And they're taking what's happening right now. What I see happening right now with my generation. There's nothing great about this industry anymore, if you ask me, because they are taking serious literature and they're just turning it into, I don't know, something modern. They're trying to
postmodern, maybe.
Yes, they're trying to impose their personality and their free way of thinking and open-minding what they understand.
But is this not? It's not like they think, okay, there is no rational and objective criteria.
They have no boundaries.
Yeah. But there is no criteria because no absolute. Because how I see the Enlightenment as following in the steps of Plato and Descartes, and the concept of Plato was that beauty is something ontologically defined. I mean, not only objective, but ontological reality. Okay. And so you cannot just make a social construct out of beauty or truth or what is good, what is evil. And so I'm going to go to Lorelei to ask you. You are teaching in a postmodern, maybe it's not postmodern, okay, but there is something postmodern, in my opinion, in a college that takes the name of Malcolm X, which to me was the postmodern hero before postmodernism.
Malcolm X?
Malcolm X, yeah. And even the name X is very postmodern. Now, I appreciate the guy. He was brilliant. He was very courageous. But I think his vision was really blurred by a little bit of subjectivity, of hate and frustrations. But my question is to you is this, talking about postmodernism. First of all, how do you define postmodernism? And if you agree with what Rozvan said, that basically there is no criteria right now in aesthetics or writings or.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that definition. Kind of like reality is whatever you create it to be, that there's no real objective right or wrong, good or bad. Everything depends on situational, everything is situational ethics. Everything depends on what the situation is, the person's perspective. It's very much reality based on the individual, how I understand and how I've experienced.
And do you agree with this trend?
You know, up until a certain point, I definitely believe in objective reality, and I'm very much a fan of the Enlightenment in every way and of Descartes. But experiencing life and also being part of an immigrant community in the United States, I kind of do experience times when truth and my reality is very much based upon my experiences that many other people have not had. So for example, my experience with certain other ethnic groups that my Romanian friends have not been exposed to, they have a certain understanding, criteria for defining what is good and bad, what is educated and not, but then again, they don't have experience with that certain group. So to a certain extent, there is a certain reality that is your own, that is based upon your own perspective. But when it comes to objective reality and like the nature of things, I am very much a fan of the Enlightenment.
Yeah.
So yes
You
and
believe
no.
in science, yeah? Go ahead.
Long story short, if my opinion about the impact of postmodernism on art, is art, all kinds of art, music, painting, acting, dancing, has something attached, something that comes with the package. It's fame, and people before postmodernism used to work and work and work for being good at what they do, so they can obtain fame. Sometimes, you know. Right now, everybody wants fame. Even if they don't want art, they want fame, and art is the way to get it. And postmodernism gives them the opportunity to call everything art, everything.
Yeah.
So they use shortcuts in music, in paintings, and you know, if you don't have talent, just call it art. People will like it. It's postmodernism.
Is this a fact?
They're trying to express their feelings, those things that people don't understand, using art, but they don't know how to control art. They don't have any real talents. They didn't study anything for real to use real art to express their feelings. They're just taking advantage of postmodernism.
Okay, why not go to the greatest representative of the Enlightenment philosophy, Immanuel Kant? Although he's not French, he's not author of literature, okay? But Immanuel Kant is famous for his book, The Critic of not pure reason, of pure judgment. Okay, and he speaks about aesthetics. And the idea that Kant promotes is that aesthetics is not just a social construct. Of course, he believes that the aesthetical judgment is a kind of transcendental judgment, like ethical judgments. So like good and evil, Kant says, is not social construct. It's something which is transcendental. And the same with beauty, with aesthetics. And and this is Enlightenment. I mean, so it's part of a trend that believes in science. Kant was a scientific mind. And do you believe that maybe our problem is that we no longer believe that there is a sort of transcendental criteria, let's call it God, okay? Whatever belongs to God. We no longer believe in an ontological ground for reality. And so that's why we no longer believe that there is an objective criterion aesthetics or literature or good and evil or social conduct, whatever. What do you?
Yeah, I definitely think that this idea has been accepted by the masses, and you see the confusion that it is causing. I think every day you see people with no purpose and that follow these trends like Razvan was talking about. We live in a type of culture where you make a video on YouTube and you become famous overnight for doing something absurd, something stupid that should not deserve that type of praise. But yeah, you see very much the impact of this all around. We're pretty much letting go of the idea of structure and that something takes time to cultivate. We want some type of instant gratification. And postmodern art very easily falls within this instant gratification type of culture that we live in.
Laura, there is a question to you. And to your respond too, but I am addressing it as the authority in literature. Okay, we are just the amateurs here. Are you familiar with a book named the Western Canon by Bloom? You know about it?
I
Harold Bloom
heard
is
about it, but I didn't read it.
Harold Bloom or Blum. Okay, is the author. It's a Jew, Gnostic, not agnostic, Gnostic.
Talks about?
Basically, he says there is a canon, like there is a biblical canon, there is a canon in literature. At the center of that canon, like the gospel is the center of the biblical canon, although it's at the end of it. Okay, he said that Shakespeare is the center of the Western canon, and everything else comes like
this theory, but I don't.
Maybe in Romania.
I don't know
Do
if
you
I read the book, but I heard about this.
as a person really educated? Now you are the authority to ask questions to. As an actor and as a person who studied theater, do you believe that Shakespeare could really be the core of Western literature?
Well, definitely in acting, he's a god.
Yeah.
But could be.
It could be.
Yes, I believe so.
And so the issue here is that, like, you go to theater, postmodern theater, or to postmodern literature,
Yes.
and all of a sudden say you are racist because you want to teach Shakespeare. You should teach that Ebonics author or
wow.
something. Is this real, or is it just some exaggeration, but right-wing conspiracy theorists?
Well, all I know is what's happening right now
Yeah.
in academia and also at the high school level, because I'm trained to be a high school teacher,
Yeah.
but I teach college, and that's maybe where the confusion was. Because we are an immigrant culture in the United States, we're trying to promote, are trying to promote a type of multicultural environment where students who come from different parts of the world can feel like they can belong, participate, not just absorb the culture
Yeah.
that they're coming to. And so with this is an effort to try to diversify the curriculum and to give value to different authors that maybe were forgotten because we focus a lot on Western, predominantly white male, centered literature. And so I see an effort to try to integrate and try to take out of every culture what is the best of their culture and to try to give that value. I don't necessarily think that is a bad thing. I think it becomes a bad thing when the Western aspect of it is left out, or it becomes like, we don't need to read all those white authors from Europe.
Yeah.
I've heard that attitude too. So it's definitely, there's good parts to it, and then it takes on a racial component too, when it becomes an issue of, white people.
Okay, I have a problem here because I attended some college in the United States, some college, and I was frustrated because back in Romania, we were focusing on the Western culture. Basically, we didn't, we're not so much fond on diversity in Romania. Now, you came to the United States and you expect, the United States I knew in Romania, back in Romania. I was Jack London and Mark Twain and Bernard Shaw and Clark Gable, for instance. So it was, and the Apollo program, so it was the best of the best. So you come to the States, and all of a sudden they are trying to shove over your throat all sort of third world marginalized paper, exotic, yes. This is the word, exotic things. And I do not disagree with studying them as a part of exotic thing, even Ebonics. Okay, I love underground literature, and to be honest with you, I love to sometimes to listen to rap music, to gang rap music. It's like something exotic to me. Okay, but in your car with doors locked,
windows rolled up.
Okay, that's right. There's a problem. So, but do you believe? The question is this, and I'm going from here to go to religion. Okay, do you believe that there is any criteria by which a certain culture could be declared superior to another culture, or all cultures are equal?
Well, I'm going to answer that in terms of what we've been talking about, which is literature in schools.
Literature in schools.
To keep things, kind of PC. In an effort to be progressive, I think a lot of the foundation, which is a lot found in Western European literature is being completely ignored. And so we're throwing literature and art at students who don't have an understanding of Socrates, Plato, of some of the things that are seminal in that everything builds upon. And so yes, I think that this is a very negative force in education. But to talk about cultural superiority, I'm not ready to make that judgment. I think if we want to be honest about it, and if we're going to look across cultures and try to recognize the contributions that different countries have made, I think we would be surprised to find certain inventions, ideas coming out of places we would not have expected.
Of course, it's a human
So I think
space.
I'm open to the idea.
If you take history in account.
Yeah, into account, yeah.
I don't know what to say. I don't want to
Say it even if you're afraid to say, okay.
I don't know. I tend to believe that Europe is where all the history is. India is where. Especially we're talking about religion. It's a religion topic. So talking about superior, how do you say that in English, culture? I think, I don't know. I tend to believe that Europe and Asia have
Eurasia.
Yes, Eurasia. But I'm not ready to say
Well,
that.
Can I add to what Isvan was
okay.
saying? If we're going to talk about cultural superiority, I don't necessarily want to look at the arts. I would look at what is promoted within that culture. I am ready to say that if there's a certain type of inequality that exists between men and women, between heterosexual, homosexual, if you see a certain type of value given to people in different socioeconomic classes, I would question the values of that culture. You know, and there's cultures where female circumcision is completely acceptable and seen as a good thing. I find that completely degrading. And at the same time, I would not say that I find the values of that culture to be superior as ones of equality. So in that respect, I would say that there's a difference in values, and certain values I think are better. Freedom is always better than slavery. So in those terms, I definitely think that there are cultures that have superior values. In terms of cultures being superior, I can't make that absolute judgment.
You know, go ahead, say.
I wanted to say the same thing. I'm not ready to make a statement on that.
No, I kind of agree and disagree with Lorelei. And I tell you why. So I believe in equality. But on the same time, I believe there are two kinds of defining equality. If I go back to Descartes, to Plato, to the fathers, to the Jewish prophets, if you want, okay, to the fathers of the Western culture, that is starting from Egypt, Babylonia, Medo-Persian Empire, Greek Empire, Roman Empire. I mean, this is the blueprint. Okay, if I go back to this, I can see that it's a tendency to say, okay, equality among all people is based on the fact that they all possess reason and free will and dignity. There's other tendency saying just, you know what, let me say something. I once talked to a professor of biology, and I am a fan of biology, by the way, not a biologist, but I'm a fan of biology. And I think at this time, I believe I'm the only Seventh-day Adventist pastor who openly supports Darwinism. Or not Darwinism, evolution. Darwinism is something different,
you
okay?
Have two right here.
Two?
Well, you have me on board.
Oh, you're on board. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You mentioned pastor.
Okay. Thank you very much for your support. Now, the question, I talked to a biology professor, said, all animals are equal. Worms and humans are equal because each of them is adapted to a certain niche, evolutionary niche. It's the same like all people are equal because they just exist. Now, I am on the side of Enlightenment, of René Descartes and Blaise Pascal, who says, yes, man is just, how it called us in English, a reed, a waving reed, but it's a thinking reed, or a reasoning reed, you know? So it's reason that makes us equal. This is my take on it. And so if the Western culture is based on promoting reason, individuality, individualism, equality, justice as supreme values, I say, yes, the Western culture is superior. Because basically, I don't remember any traditional culture to promote these values. Excuse me if I'm wrong.
Well, I think I'm not an expert on every culture that exists. I definitely agree with you when it comes to values. I definitely think that certain values are superior to others. But I think at the same time, I can't make that statement not really understanding the intricacies of certain tribal cultures and the way that they function together to survive. There's something at that level that also promotes the group or whatever configurations that they have to keep them surviving. And I think we shouldn't devalue those things either, and try to also understand that maybe we don't have that experience, because of maybe the geographical location that we are in, and that we cannot fully understand the complexity that they have to deal with in a different way. So I'm open to understanding that too.
I'm open to understanding it too, but I live in a tribal culture. It's called church, okay? In this tribal culture, reason is considered inferior to whatever emotion you have, and you think you think it's a subjective revelation. Your emotion is God told me, Jesus told me, and so and so. And I here is because our time is running out. I want to go to the point tonight. The real issue I'm interested in. So, in my humble opinion, God is the basis of the Western values. God. I mean, the Western concept of God, which comes from Plato and Aristotle, and of course from the Hebrew prophets, but merged into the church fathers, Western theologians' thought. This concept is that of a rational God, and also that of a God that upholds supreme values. Okay, so this is the Western. I didn't find it in India, in China, in Aztec, Inca cultures. It's only Western. And when I say Western, you know what? I mean even Cro-Magnon and cave paintings. Maybe, I mean, it's a tendency in the West. Now, the problem is that the Enlightenment, in my humble opinion, the Enlightenment is not something that came against this Western concept of God. Maybe some dialectics here, but it's on the same trend. Now, what I see in the church, for instance, what I see in the church is that the church is accepting the concept, the postmodern concept that values and truth, reality, is a social construct. For instance, we say, okay, it's a social construct to believe that the Earth is 4.7 billion years old. So it's also a social construct that it's 6,000 years old, and people rode dinosaurs on this planet. And so I prefer my social construct because it's the social concept of the people of God, not of the offsprings of the devil. So how do you find this? First, tell me if you think I'm right in this, if I'm correct in this evaluation of the church, and how do you see the impact of a possible new enlightenment in the church in regard to this environment?
Well, I think a lot of times we fall into, or Protestantism particularly, falls into this emotional realm, which oftentimes contradicts what is rational and reasonable. You have all these exceptional miracles that happen. You have like instant conversions and the Spirit moving. I think
born again.
Right. I think, unfortunately, I don't want to be negative, but the truth is I think a lot of it comes out of laziness, because I think clergy, for example, is not held to a certain academic standard, and so you don't have to understand, like we were talking about earlier, the foundations of the ideas that we have based in classical philosophy. You're not required to know these things, and it becomes very postmodern. It becomes whatever the leader of that community makes it out to be. Oftentimes there's motivations there that are less than holy ones. So you definitely see that, and also to participate in the scientific dialogue, you have to, like Razvan said, be informed to a certain extent. And that is, for many people, a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Because once you open up a door, you realize that maybe what you've been told doesn't necessarily reflect what scientific findings are out there. And so many people are promoting this idea of learning more to be able to compete with all the other thoughts out there. It's something done out of fear. Because you see people, they learn so many new things and then they leave the church, because the church can't compete with what exists in the world in the realm of science. So I think the church is scared. I
believe
think
it
at the same
can,
time people
but not
are
the
lazy.
Yeah.
fundamental church.
Right.
A
It
fundamental church,
exists,
yeah.
but it's on a smaller scale.
And the
than-
impact, my opinion, my humble opinion about the impact of Illuminism in the modern church,
Yeah.
church. Well, I see only three alternatives. I see the smallest percentage of people who will start questioning their beliefs. The others that will not, and maybe four alternatives, lose interest in religion.
Yeah.
The ones that would just carry on believing what they already believes without changing anything, and violence. The fourth one.
The violence,
Yes.
like Muslim, yeah, and or maybe some evangelical fundamentalists are prone
Yeah.
to violence too.
Out of all these four alternatives, I don't know which one will prevail or take the lead.
You know what?
I'm inclined to believe that not the smallest percentage of people starting changing what they have believed for a lifetime.
Okay,
In favor of
let me
science and
maybe be a little more optimistic. You know, I believe that the solution is the killing of Buddha. You know what I mean? Kill the Buddha.
Oh, kill
the Buddha. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
basic what happens, you have to get rid of an obsolete concept of God. I mean, the concept of God has evolved during the century. So you have to accept a modern concept of God. What you believed was God, it was only an idol, a carved image, destroyed. Destroy all the carved images. If we learn something from the Jewish prophets, it's destroy the idols and move on.
It's simple.
Yeah.
It's not God. It's the God you want.
Want
it to be.
it's your own
Yeah,
fabrication.
exactly.
Secondly, why I'm optimistic, because look, what happened with the Christian church during the Enlightenment? They started biblical high criticism, scientific theology.
Yes.
Then shouldn't forget that the Anglican church buried Darwin along with Newton in the same cemetery. It's not great. Like, would we bury Darwin? I mean, imagine the fact. So the Anglican Church was when George Darwin came with his theory, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Wilberforce, had a controversy with Darwin, but it was a scientific controversy.
Yeah.
The guy brought science, not to Darwin, with T.H. Huxley, the Darwin's bulldog. And so he brought scientific arguments against Huxley. He lost on the scientific side, but he never tried to impose. He never said, we should disfellowship Mr. Darwin and Mr. Huxley from the church. Send them to hell. And so this is the Anglican Church. Now, I can see the same. It's very interesting that the Catholic Church that had that Galileo trial, kangaroo court, is now very open to science, at least when it does not come to stem cell research or, procreation. But so, don't you believe that we would be able to change our church in this respect?
Well, I think a change is definitely happening at a very, very, very small scale.
You believe?
And I think the change is happening because the mass is kind of persecuting people who are interested and looking outside of just divine revelation to explain the earthquake that happened in Japan.
Oh, yeah.
Or divine motives, and who still want to be part of the church, but they want to understand objective reality in terms of the laws of nature.
And have answers.
Right,
Yeah.
and so I think because there's this tension between the two groups, you see smaller communities forming. And I'll give you an example of the Spectrum blog, which I like to read. Sometimes they get involved in political things and they have a political agenda, but at the same time, it's a community of people that come together and they allow for new ideas to be written about without necessarily putting down that idea.
Yeah.
They allow it to exist, and with time, people can criticize it, come up with new studies. But I think this era of completely shutting down any type of scientific inquiry or scientific response to a question is slowly going to come to an end, because you can't compete with the technological advances that are growing exponentially every single year. At one point, the church is saying, we don't believe any of it. Well, that's not going to really leave them with too many members.
I had trouble. Maybe I wasn't paying enough attention. Were you referring to the church or the leaders of the church?
Oh, good question, good question. I would prefer to avoid this question.
Well, if you're referring to I believe that most leaders of the church, there are a lot of things involved in understanding what you believe when you're a leader of the church, and maybe a lot of leaders of the world of the church understand science and even science.
Yeah. I'm sure.
Of course,
they are good educated after all.
And they can manipulate this thing and turn science into trust us. We know what to preach.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about the church or the leaders of the church, because there's a big difference.
It's a good question. What I believe, I don't want to make a very radical statement in here, but what I believe is that basically if you're a leader, you are part of a bureaucracy. And what happens is that when things are shaking beneath your superstructure, it's going to affect you. So you don't want changes to happen, even the cradle changes. But let me say something. I was very encouraged in this church because when Răzvan came from Romania, he came to our church. And I was encouraged by your becoming part of our team, So then I was encouraged when I noticed that the Lorelei started coming more often to the church and becoming part of our youth team and an active part. And so I can see that young people with education are not just living and becoming atheists. They are coming back, staying, and trying to challenge the obsolete things in religion, which is very good for the church. Of course, there is opposition. And some people even say, why don't you just leave our church? And they show you the door, or give you the boot. So why don't you just get away from here and leave us alone with our creed? And somebody even said, let the faith to the hell as it is. Mm-hmm. It's a great expression.
Well, let's not forget, our church in particular, why are people coming to our church? There are people in our church who enjoy coming because they get something out of it, and they know that they can say something because they do have questions. And if a church turns away people that don't necessarily agree or don't believe, but still want to attend, what kind of service are we doing them? Our church accepts people with opinions and lets them voice their opinion, and then we discuss things, and there's a platform for that. And I think the problem is that most churches are not a place where you could come in with maybe a controversial issue and with your honest opinion about it and be comfortable sharing that. And I think if that climate existed, I feel privileged to be part of this, and I'm very proud of it. But if that existed in more churches, I think so many people would come to church. I know people who wish that there was a place that they could go, that they could express their questions and concerns about topics that are taboo or whatever. But that just doesn't exist.
I am going to ask you two ending questions for this time. So just our agenda is still, it's only 2 or 3 items we discussed on our agenda. So we have to meet again if you offer us this privilege. Now, I have 2 ending questions. First question is, what is the 28 beliefs of the Seventh Adventist Church, yeah? 28 statements of belief, which according to the preamble of the 28 statements, they are not a creed or a dogma. They are just a proposition, okay? Now, they are presumptive, to say so. My first question is, which of the 28 beliefs you think is the most unacceptable to an educated person? Okay. Yeah, and which of the 28 beliefs you think is the one you'd most likely say amen to it? Okay.
Can I start with the one that I find unacceptable?
Yeah.
I wish I had him in front of me. I don't know what number it is, but it is the one that talks about leisure activities that are acceptable, and it puts jazz music and any type of music that is also literature under the category of frivolous entertainment that has no value. I think any educated person who knows anything about music, first of all, understands that jazz music is probably one of the most complex.
Yeah.
It is an incredible art form, and to throw non-religious literature and put it under frivolous entertainment really, I mean, I can't even express how ridiculous that
It's
concept
even
is.
this is the I mean this is the formal protocol. But if you hear people talking in the pews, they say it's devilish, it's from the Satan, it's a sin to just read the literature and so on. You know, fiction,
Right.
fiction is from the devil. So what? Okay, this is
don't
your
know the
most
Bible.
offensive, yeah, to you.
I find it just ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
I don't want to be.
Yeah. To you, which one is
I
the
don't know
most?
them by heart, but believing in the, and I'm pretty sure this is one of them,
Yeah.
believing in the creation of man.
Literal sixth
out of-
day.
Literal six
And
day
molded of
and-
clay, like
yes,
yeah,
and done out of yeah,
yeah.
and
And,
6,000 years. theory.
Humans and dinosaurs crossing paths
Exactly,
and all those
that's
stuff.
for me.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, it's impossible for an educated person to believe all this stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
even the way you see, I went to GYC a couple of years ago. Sorry to interrupt
ahead,
you.
go ahead, I
But
get
I
it.
noticed that this principle, there's zero leeway. It is, if there's one that's dogmatic, it is this one.
Yeah.
There is no way around this one for the
And it's interesting,
leadership.
it's a scientific thing. It's not even a theological issue. It's a
Exactly.
scientific issue. Yeah.
I want to admit that when I started,
Yeah.
I wasn't 100% sure, and not even now. I'm not 100%
Yeah.
sure about anything. As I said before, what I did.
There is not 100% in science.
Certainty is a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
But first, when I started, I didn't have any opinions against it, but I wasn't that educated on this subject, and it's impossible to believe it once you do the least amount of study on this.
I used to promote scientific creationism in church openly, and maybe you'll find some
That's
tape,
believing.
some records. But we all grow, you know. So, which
That's the point.
yeah, we have to grow. Which is the most, I mean, the best of them?
I can't go and say this one is the best. I could tell you the ones that I find offensive.
Yeah.
I would say the rest, I don't really have an issue with certain principles and values that we have. So if that's a very general statement, but I can't pick out my favorite. Or I would just say that there are two in particular that I think just are not relevant
One was
anymore.
entertainment and culture. The other,
Right, was the literal interpretation
oh, the literal
of
interpretation of Genesis,
yeah.
which is not even, I mean, biblically speaking, is not the best hermeneutics you can apply. Razvan, what is the best among the 28 beliefs?
I would have to say the best.
Okay, I'm using a word that just crossed my mind, you know. I don't know what word to use.
I'm pretty fond of the Sabbath.
The Sabbath.
I am, yes, pretty fond.
What is so great about the Sabbath?
What is so what?
Great about the Sabbath.
What is so great about the Sabbath? Well, we had a talk about this, and you kind of changed my opinions because I believed in it as a big sign towards humanity and the great purpose of life coming
Yeah.
together. And the explanation you gave us on your beliefs about the Sabbath was it kind of made me wonder and change my opinions about just respecting your
Yeah, but you know what? This what I said. My rationale for the Sabbath is basically taken from the Great Controversy. You know, because it stands for one side in the Great Controversy. So it's very not fundamental, but fundamentally Adventist. Now, because our time is short, I don't want to get into this issue right now. But I believe that also the Sabbath is a great experience because we are coming together, and it's something different from Sunday. I don't have the explanation for everything, but it's different, okay? But we don't have time to talk about this issue.
Yes.
Thank you for staying with us tonight, and I want to propose another issue for the two of you for the next time. You talked about equality, about your experience in the Malcolm X College, which, let me say, when I first drove by, I was new in Chicago, I said, what? Malcolm X College, man, it's something interesting. I love radical ideas anyway. But why not talk about equality, race, gender, and sexual orientation next time? Okay. From a Christian perspective and Enlightenment perspective. Do you agree with this issue?
Sure, absolutely. Sure.
So next time, next week, we are going to meet for another table talk. And we are going to talk about equality, race, gender, homosexuality, and whatever comes under the umbrella of equality in this world. Thank you very much. So we'll see you next time. And I want to say special thanks to my guests, Lorelei and Razvan. Please, if you address your inputs and questions on the forum of Oxygen Doi, do it only in English for Lorelei. You can talk to Razvan and to me in Romanian, but please do it in English for Lorelei if you are really expecting an answer from her. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.